Good morning, it's Ian Whitworth from Scene Change and welcome to Saxton Fireside Chats. Our guest this morning is Nadine Champion. She had a gold medal, she's a mixed martial artist, took out a gold medal at the World Cup of Martial Arts and is undefeated in the ring. She spent a lifetime studying fear, resilience and the ability to deal with rapid change. So it's like she's kind of spent her entire life preparing for April 2020. So welcome to that. How do you deal with adversity? Is it with a Chuck Norris style roundhouse kick and a flurry of blows to your obstacles with fists of steel? Spoiler alert, no, it's thinking. So to talk about how to think and do better in these strange times, we have Nadine Champion. Nadine, thanks for joining us.
Good morning. It's great to be here.
It is nice to be in. It's nice to be out. So that introduction conjures up all sorts of images of extreme fighting performance. Tell us the Nadine Champion story.
Well, it's not so much extreme fighting performance for me as a whole lot of work on my mindset, which I think is probably pretty relevant for right now.
Yeah.
I was a little martial artist from when I was a small child. I watched the Karate Kid movie, and that was exactly what I wanted my life to be like. So, you know, my best friend loved ponies, and I wanted to learn all of the kung fuing of everybody.
A great VHS motivational story.
It was a beautiful thing. So, you know, we all wanted to be like someone when we grew up, and I wanted to be like Daniel-san, but I really wanted a Mr. Miyagi. And I was very lucky. It took me 10 years to find him. As a man named Benny the Jet Urquidez, and I had to go to the other side of the world to train with him, but I was very lucky to find somebody who not only gave me, we call it an external skill set, so the martial arts skills. The reason that I stayed with him as a mentor and a teacher for 25 years now is that he worked on the internal training, so all of the mindset and giving me heart to go after my dreams and be resilient. So I was very lucky to find somebody to be in my corner.
What was your dream? Was it to win fights or become a better version of yourself? Or what was actually driving you for 25 years of doing that?
My dream kept changing, you know, as I think everybody's dreams do. You know, you aim yourself at one thing and then that shifts to something else. You know, I was actually terrified of fighting. I didn't want to do it. So I started out in touch contact martial arts where, you know, if you've seen a movie where there's someone doing all the moves on the beach by themselves, I was into that kind of martial arts. I didn't want to fight anybody. I still don't want to, you know, I'm more likely to give you a hug, not right now, but I'm not into that part of it. But part of how we challenge ourselves in that world is by finding different ways to test yourself. Test what you're able to do physically, but mostly it's a test of who you are as a person, what you're capable of, and what you believe you're made of, and how that manifests itself in the things that you try to achieve.
So when you won the gold medal in the World Cup, how did you feel? Did you feel like, finally I've done the thing I've always wanted to, or was it just part of the journey?
Oddly enough, you know, to be honest with you now, looking back on it, I won a gold medal at the World Cup of Martial Arts, and it sounds like something that I'd always wanted to do, you know. But when the moment happened, I had this niggling feeling. I had a niggling feeling within me that there was more I could be doing. I had more within me than had yet come out. When I won that medal, it was in, again, touch contact martial arts. So my threat level was quite low. The amount of pressure I was under was relatively low in what could go wrong for me. The worst thing that could have happened was I would be not successful that day. So I knew secretly at that point, it was in the back of my mind, that maybe I could do more if I aimed myself in a different direction. And I wonder how many people are feeling like that right now with what's happening in the world. You know, you've been pointing yourself this way in your career or in your life, and then all of a sudden things start to shift and you have a voice in the back of your head saying, what if I tried this thing over here? And in my case, that was getting into the ring and doing full contact competition. I hadn't wanted to do it before, but circumstances changed and I started to wonder, what if I did try to do that? You know, even though I was really scared of it, but admitting I was scared of it was such a big part of it. That's why I love to talk about fear and courage, because I let my fear of what could happen or what could go wrong or not being successful hold me back for so many years. And then eventually, when I did have the courage to try it, it went really well for me.
So when you get in the ring and take a pounding, if people always say, "Oh, just do it. It's nowhere near as bad as you feared. It's just go in there." And you think, I don't know if that's true. Is it actually quite bad getting pounded by a martial arts expert?
The idea is to not take any impact.
Right.
So it's an art form if it's done correctly. I was in a situation where it's an opportunity to test yourself. I wasn't interested in so many different parts of it. I was interested in facing my fear. So the physical challenge of it hurts. It's no fun. But the challenge that I really had to face was within myself. You know, being able to believe in myself in a situation where the outcome may be painful, where I may be really disappointing. You know, so it was all about, what am I made of? What can I do? And if I really test myself in a situation where I can't control the outcome, where I'm unsure, and the risk is quite high, will I be able to rise to the occasion on that day? Okay. And that was what Sensei Benny was all about teaching me. He talks about your worst day abilities, not your best day abilities.
Okay.
So best day abilities is, you know, when everything's going great. Worst day abilities is, what are you made of when the chips are down, when things go wrong? Can you still rise to the occasion? And I think that's what so many people are being called upon right now to do, you know, with their businesses, with their home lives, and, you know, with their health at the moment.
How's your business? Because you do a bit of outdoor training work with people. How's that going?
I do all kinds of things, yeah. So I'm lucky. I've got lots of different things that I love to do. So, you know, obviously I love speaking. I love to do mindset coaching, and I also still do a little bit of martial arts teaching. You know, it's all shifting and changing. But, you know, I had some really big changes happen in my life just before I started speaking. Yeah. And what I took from that, and when things really change, I'm a big fan of going right back down to your values, what really matters to you. And that was how I rebuilt my life about 6 years ago when my chips were totally down. It comes down to, what do you love to do? What really matters to you? What are you willing to fight for? And what are you really doing when you're doing business? You know, for me, I thought at the time I was competing or I was teaching people martial arts. What I came to realize was the essence of what I was doing was really about sharing the things that I'd been so lucky to be taught. I found this Mr. Miyagi person, and it's really hard to find one apparently. When I talk to people about their mentors, they're hard to find.
Harder now too.
Well, you know, there's something to be said for the internet, thank goodness.
That's true. So the chips are down, so tell us about that.
Well, you know, there's so many things that make us who we are in our lives, you know. And for me, my competition, my sport, this thing that I'd been passionate about for decades, was such a big part of my life. It was linked to my business. There were all of these things really that were so about the external parts of life. And I think the thing that so many people are going through right now is that all of the external stuff that makes them who they are, that's such a big part of their identity, may have been taken away overnight. You know, for me, I had all those things operating at a really high level in my life, and then all of a sudden the brakes started screeching, and I got diagnosed with cancer about 6 years ago. I had Hodgkin's lymphoma, and you know, I thought I knew what was going on in my life. I thought I'd laid out my business and personal opportunities, and then literally overnight, bang, my whole life stopped. And I think there's a lot of people right now having that feeling and going, what do I do?
Because you had all sorts of things going on at the time you discovered that diagnosis, didn't you?
Yeah, it was not the best time, you know, and I think that, you know, there'll be lots of people having that feeling too. Like, all of the challenges that are happening in life right now may come at a good time for you, but they may have also come at a really inopportune moment, generally speaking, in your life. For me, going into my cancer diagnosis, I just watched my brother pass away from lung cancer. That was actually how I realized that I needed to go to the doctor as well. I just found a little lump near my collarbone, and it would have been so much easier for me to push that to the side. But there come certain moments in life where, you know, we're really called upon to take the harder road, you know, to do the thing that takes a bit more courage. And that's why so much of what I love to share with people now is around courage. You know, this idea of 10 seconds of courage where, you know, we do hesitate. We do know that maybe I should call the doctor. Maybe I should reach out to that colleague, you know, make that connection, take this course while we're in quarantine. There are all of these things that we know would probably benefit us. make us stronger, change the course of our lives. But it's very natural to wobble and have moments of hesitation where we think, oh, I don't know if I can do that today. So I'm very grateful that I had a tool that I could use, 10 seconds of courage, take a deep breath, decide if that's the direction I really need to go. And instead of tapping into that hesitation feeling, knowing that it's very normal, putting it to the side and picking up the phone, taking that first step.
So the 10 seconds of courage, that's from Sensei Benny, is that his concept? So tell us how that, for people at home who are not very brave or disciplined like me, how does that work?
I think I used to always get positioned as a strong woman, and people would look at me and think, well, I could never do that. They would tell me this, I could never do what you do. You must be different from me. And, I had a great opportunity to do a TEDx talk, 5 years ago, and I talked about this idea of courage and where I'd learnt it from. Having someone literally in my corner challenging me to take those steps when I felt myself hesitate, and saying to me in a field where, in martial arts or in fighting, you wouldn't think that it's okay to say, I'm really scared of doing that. But I had a teacher who wasn't just about the external. He was saying it's very important to admit what you're afraid of so that you can break the power of it. But when you try to hide it or when you push it down, we get stuck there.
So it's okay to be scared?
We're all scared. I was super scared. I used to cry all the time in training, and, I had been in other situations where people were trying to discourage that feeling instead of teaching me to own it and name it and bring it forward, and then giving me a tool to use at the moment where I decided that the thing that I needed to do was more important than the fear that I was feeling.
Yeah.
So I'm very grateful to him for sharing that with me.
So you made it through that. You're in remission when you did a TED talk that kind of went bananas. Shall we just play the end of that? So give us explain what we're going to look at here.
Sure. So it was 1 year after I'd just finished my cancer treatment. I was probably at the most vulnerable point of my life, physically and mentally. The last thing I wanted to do was do my first ever public speaking event in front of 2,500 people at the Sydney Opera House. I'd never done any public speaking before. And then one of my students said to me, all of these tools, the mindset tools that you've shared with me, I think they'd be interesting for people who don't do martial arts, in the business sector, in people's personal lives. It all applies. And I said, really? But she had a vision, and the next thing I knew, I was, the closing speaker at this huge event. And, it came at a moment that wasn't ideal for me. And I think, at the moment, a lot of people are in that situation where they might see opportunities, but the timing might not feel great. But in those moments, I think you really have an opportunity to change your life if you're brave enough to take them.
Okay, well, life-changing moments. Let's have a look at that clip, shall we?
One more thing. If you're in this with me, if you're willing this to work for me, and I really hope you are, I'm going to ask you to aim your 10 seconds of courage at me while I try to be brave. So if you're with me, can you hold your hands straight up? And just leave it there while I try.
Obviously, you were very affected by that moment. Did you really doubt, with all your decades of training, that you could get through that block of wood?
Yeah, so the thing that I'd explained to the audience right before that moment, I'd shared this idea of 10 seconds of courage. I'd shared all of these lessons that my teacher had shared with me. And then I had explained to them that at this moment in my life, I was anything but brave. I was anything but strong. I didn't feel like the fighter, that I used to be, because it was so soon after my treatment. I was still growing my hair out. I felt really vulnerable, and I couldn't even take the lid off a bottle of water physically at that point. Even though I looked okay, I wasn't okay. So it was taking off the armor and admitting my vulnerability and saying to everybody, like, this is how we all feel on some level. And then taking a chance by doing this demonstration that I'd only agreed to do 1 week before the event. So it was knowing you are who you tell yourself you are. You're capable of what you tell yourself you're capable of. And I don't mean decide you're Mariah Carey and hold a concert today, but it's just about knowing within yourself, what if I did do this? What if I did try? So I was willing to demonstrate 10 seconds of courage because it was something that, even though it was something I used to be able to do, in that moment, I didn't know who I was anymore because all the external things, even my physical strength, had been taken away. So I was willing to, to give it a try and see what happened. And the reason I started crying was because everyone in front of me was crying. And Sensei Benny had told me, invite people in, let them know, if you feel this way, be part of what I'm doing. So I just hadn't factored in what would happen when I asked them to be part of it. And every hand in that place shot up. And people were crying, and that's how I knew you understand what it feels like to take a chance, to try to be something, that's stretching you and to get back up when you've been knocked down. Yeah.
You've actually brought a board with you that we have here. We ordinarily, Nadine teaches someone from the audience to smack through it, but for reasons of distancing, we've decided to keep it hygienic. But I've tested it as a solid board. It's like a sort of bread board they use to cut the sourdough that you've been making at home, from what I read. So what is the secret to how do you punch through a heavy-duty plank of wood?
See, the board represents, all of the barriers that we put in front of ourselves. So we all create mindset barriers around what we're willing to try, what we think we can do. It's so not about the martial arts skills of breaking the board. What it comes down to, and the reason that I love to use it when I speak at conferences, is because I can take someone from the audience who's never done martial arts before and talk to them about their mindset and their self-belief. Because if you don't believe you can do it, if you're thinking the last thought before you go to break it is, I'm not sure, I'm not sure, I'm not sure, I'm not sure, people tend to hesitate and pull back, which creates not the outcome they're looking for. But if you make that last thought that your reality is going to be, I can do this, I'm going to break the board, it's amazing how often it works.
So you go through to the other side. On the other side is metaphorically the successful 2021 that we're all going to have.
Well, of course,
get through that board to get to it.
But I think there'll be a number of people at the moment relating to that idea of, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what I can do. What if I can't do what I used to do? What if I can't do it on the same level? What if? And it's that doubt that we all have that can be really scary. I did criminology at university, and there are 5 fears that we all have, and some of those are being hit right now around isolation, around our health, but the main one that we all have experience with on the day-to-day is ego death.
Ego death.
Ego death. I know it sounds very, very intense, but most of us don't have a great deal of experience with loss of autonomy, but we do have a lot of experience with, can I do this thing? Will people support me? Will my idea be well received? What if I try a new career, a new hobby? How will it go? It's all of the things that are centered around how we feel about ourselves and how we move in the world that I think people are having a little fear and anxiety around at the moment.
So you feel that if you can name that fear, you're better placed to get through?
Yeah, it's being able to name it with the right people at the right time. But, everyone reacts to what's happening at the moment differently. And you can see it when you go outside. I've been outside exercising the last few days, and you can see some people are treating it like it's not happening. Other people are very much, in fear state, and the body chemistry that comes with that. But
I think... Did you get apprehended by some local vigilantes when you were running a class?
I did. Well, if you could call a senior citizen that came up to us, a vigilante. But I was doing, at the very beginning of the social distancing, I was doing a session with some guys outside. We were spaced out, but one of the local ladies felt that we weren't spaced out far enough and came up and really let us know that. She really unloaded on us, and that was just such a great example of how people are responding to fear. I don't think that lady normally goes around yelling at people. Yeah. But the guys I was with sort of looked to me to respond because she was yelling at me, and I didn't quite respond the way they thought I would.
How did you respond?
I just said, thank you. You know, I said, I understand you're feeling a lot of fear right now. A lot of people are.
Yeah.
I appreciate you reminding us. Thank you. You're right. You know, there was no need for me to resist against it. And that's one thing that competition was good for, is you know when to pick your battles.
Yeah.
I'm not resisting so many things in my life right now. And I think the people that I see struggling, in my circle anyway, are really coming up against that resistance of, I can't believe this is happening.
Yeah.
I don't want my life to change like this. I want to go outside. I want to go back to work. You know, I want the kids to learn their own multiplication tables, all of that stuff.
Sure.
But, you know, path of least resistance sometimes is the easiest road.
If you know a martial arts expert, it's really bad manners to expect them to react to any sort of situation with vigilante action. That's the correct thing. It's just be polite and run away. It's like doing that it's like meeting a doctor at a party and asking them about your medical problems. It's just bad manners. Please let the martial arts experts just keep it chilled.
That's what I think people don't understand. The more that you learn about the vulnerability of the body and how to defend yourself and other people, the less likely you would ever be to do anything violent, in inverted commas. We train so that we know how to avoid these situations. And one of the things about competing in the ring is you learn exactly what you're capable of, but also you learn a lot about people's vulnerabilities, believe it or not. I'm not going to create tension with someone if I don't need to. If I can just simply speak straight to the heart of the point, I see that you're afraid. A lot of people are afraid. I hear you, no problem. You know, rather than pushing against it, you snap at me, I snap back.
Yeah.
That's the easy road in some ways, but you know, if you can speak to the heart of the feeling behind it, I see you, I see your fear, and it's okay with me. I'm not going to challenge you on it, I'm just going to recognize it.
Which seems like a good approach within your own house in these times too.
Yeah, well, you've got to know what you're willing to fight for, in inverted commas. But you know, I'm all about maintaining my own peace, and you know, I love being in service of other people. I love helping other people, as opposed to, you know, trying to control everything. So I learned in the ring, you can't control everything. You know, just when you think it's going this way, you slip, you end up on the ground. You know, it's not about being able to control things. My illness 6 years ago taught me that I'm not as in control as I thought I was. Sometimes things happen in life and in the world that you have no control over, that happen for no good reason, that you couldn't have planned for. And if you resist against that, like I did in the beginning, that's when the problems happen. So I sort of learnt to go with the flow, roll with the punches, so to speak. Yep. And, you know, I found that very helpful at this time as well.
You've obviously done a lot of daily discipline most of your life. What daily disciplines do you feel are essential for people to get through this whole lockdown situation without going mad? And when's it okay to go, yeah, I haven't been very disciplined today? Tell us more about that.
Nobody's perfect. You know, you can just do your best with what works for you at the moment. I have a lot of daily mindset tools that I use. First thing that comes out of my mouth every morning is thank you. You know, just being grateful to be here. I get another day with my loved ones. I get another day to do something that I enjoy. Every day I ask for courage. I ask for forgiveness of myself and others. You know, clear sight, and also to act with good intentions, so that everything I do is for a healing purpose, not a harming purpose. So I set myself up every morning. I do 2 daily readings every morning to set my mind on the right track. I do meditation, I do breathing. Every day I'm going for a walk to exercise, if not more. And, you know, just choosing what I focus my mind on. So because we can't control what's happening in the world, we can control what happens in our inner world. And I'm responsible for that. You're responsible for that. And it's realizing that that's what you have power over. Mm-hmm. So I do a lot of reading at home. You know, I read a lot of nonfiction. I like to educate myself, not just about things that are happening in the world, but how can I strengthen myself internally at the moment? So we have a thing called homeschool at home, not just of our little 9-year-old with the multiplication table.
Adult homeschool.
Adult homeschool,
Yep.
where, you know, my partner and I, we both enjoy reading similar things. So we're coming to each other and saying, hey, did you see this? And it's mentally stimulating. Share this podcast with you. Did you see this video? You know, being in a position where we can choose to focus our minds on positivity and growing, rather than what would be very natural to focus on right now, especially if you turn the news on, which is, you know, the stress and anxiety of the current situation in the world.
So at the moment, the default activity is watch the news and just binge watch Netflix. So that seems like quite a good alternative to that, to emerge from this.
That works some days too,
You're saying the Sensei Benny taught you to write stuff down. Is that important to you?
100%. So I think the reason I was so lucky to have somebody, who was right beside me, teaching me, and who invested a lot of care and time with me over years, was he would teach me a concept, and then he would say, I want you to every morning get up and say thank you and do these things and breathe this way. And I would intellectually understand what he was saying. Thank you, got it. And then I wouldn't carry it out. So he was very good at drawing me back around to it and saying, did you write down what I asked you to? Can you show me? It was almost like school, like homeschool, having somebody there supporting me to actually put pen to paper. And, I made a video not too long ago about resilience and about writing down your resilience resume. Especially, amazingly, it was right before this time happened.
Now's the time.
Because we all have professional resumes. I did this for this long. This is my skill set. Here's what I've learned. Here's what I'm really good at. But we don't necessarily have, and I recommend that everyone gets one very, very soon, pen to paper, is we don't necessarily have even a timeline of 5 key events in your life that caused you to recognize you do have resilience. You do have the ability to get back up, start again, to build yourself up through challenging times. So even just jotting down, the quick version on a Post-it note is 5 events in your life that you would name as resilience, and what was it in you that helped you get through them? What did you learn about yourself in those times? Or you can do the extended mix if you've got a lot of time on your hands, but it's arming yourself with clarity about your own internal skill set so that when the challenges of the coming months do happen, rather than, your friend saying to you, be more resilient, you can tap into that within yourself and say, where has my resilience come from? What do I already know about this? What have I lived through in my life before that I can use to really make the best of this time now?
Yeah. So the things you write down are the things you actually do.
Yeah, it's trusting yourself.
Yeah.
So, even when everything gets taken away from you and you're wobbling and your friend says to you, hey, why don't you go and do, a TEDx talk as your first ever public speaking, that you can come back to that part of you that does have a bit of self-knowing. And Sensei Benny always used to ask me to name things. He calls it the I am concept, being able to say, I am resilient. Why are you resilient? And being able to have clarity on it within yourself. So one of the things that I used to tell myself in my competitive career was I am someone who rises to the occasion. If you put me in a small room to compete, it'd go okay. Put me in a big room in front of a huge audience and I would rise to the occasion. So I used to tell myself that even though all of my external circumstances had changed, when my moment came, I chose 1 week before, I'm going to try to do something that will cause me to rise to the occasion because I wasn't sure who I was anymore.
Yeah.
And I needed an external way of gaining that knowledge.
Speaking of audiences, let's go to some Q&A. If we have any questions, then fire them up in the Zoom chat. Any ideas from Benson? Any ideas on how we can encourage reluctant elders to stimulate their minds now that a lot of their social channels are removed? I see in Australia, we're lucky we don't have Fox News. What are your suggestions for us?
Well, I'm going through the same thing. I'm calling my mum at regular intervals, and I called her many weeks ago and said, one thing I'm doing, I'm just sharing with, older people around me what works for me. I think rather than telling you should do this, my approach, my strategy is I'm going to share with you what works for me or people around me and see if you relate to that. I'm calling my mum and saying, I've got a little calling circle happening at the moment. Who could you set that up with each week on a different day you call each other? Or even simple things I shared with her, a little jigsaw puzzle game that I'm enjoying doing at the moment for free time. Just to keep her connected and stimulated in a really small, fun way.
Yeah. And
saying, hey, each time you finish the puzzle, send me a picture. I'll send you the picture of what I'm doing, just to create connection and support, letting people know that you're there for them. And really encouraging them to make sure they've got other people in their corner. And again, writing it down. So I asked her, who's in your corner? Who's on your corner team? Write it down.
Yeah.
Then you know who to go to. It's clear to you, because we all have moments of feeling a bit alone in this, and feeling isolated. So when that moment comes, you know who to call. Mm. It's not a foreign loose concept. It's something very tangible that's right in front of you.
Yeah. I looked up Sensei before this interview because I wasn't sure what it meant, and it literally just means someone who's older than you.
Yeah.
Literal translation. And while it's important to call up your parents and whoever, it's still a lot of stuff you can learn from them. You
Absolutely. You know, oddly enough, when that situation happened with the ladies yelling at us in the street about the training we were doing, one of the young guys that I was training had said to me he wasn't sure if he respects his elders. And I said to him, you absolutely should. You know, that's a value that I was brought up with that maybe isn't as clear now, but I said exactly the same thing to him. You know, we have so much to learn from people who may have been through something, similar to this in their own way before. That way we're not reinventing the wheel.
Yep.
I'm very grateful to have had someone in my life who shared their experience with me. And sometimes all it takes is one good question and you'll get more than you could possibly bargain for in return.
Cool. Can you talk some more, from Greg, can you talk some more about the process of naming your fear?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's
a board game. Name that fear.
Put it this way. Before COVID happened, I just spent 3 weeks practicing self-isolation in New Zealand by accident. I had a mountain biking accident. I broke my ribs, I punctured my lung, and I had to stay in the country for 3 weeks because I wasn't allowed to fly.
Yeah.
And in that time, I was doing some reading, some homeschool. I was sending out some messages to friends, and I was doing some writing about some different things I'd like to speak on. And one of the questions I sent out was, tell me 3 things you're willing to fight for. I got 20 responses out of 20 people I asked. The next one was, tell me 3 things you're afraid of. How many responses do you think I got?
2.
5.
5.
Fear can be a dirty word for people. It's uncomfortable. It's natural that it feels a bit itchy and a bit like, oh, I don't want to share that with you because it's overexposing.
Yeah.
I'm not saying broadcast on LinkedIn your 3 deepest fears,
yeah.
but if you can have someone in your corner that you trust and share with them, right now I do feel a little bit lonely, or I am feeling anxiety about my mortgage, or will my business still be there after this? It's being able to open up that conversation. And it's not about oversharing. It's just about saying, right now this is how I feel. Because that takes courage, that takes strength to be able to just name it and see it clearly outside of yourself. And the most beautiful thing is when someone else meets you there and says, you know what, I feel that too. Here's my version of it. Here's what's happening. It creates connection in a real way. So I think a lot of people are having that challenge at the moment with taking off their business armor, their professional self, their persona, and trying to make that match with who they are at home when the kids need to brush their hair, but you're about to go on a Zoom meeting. It's that crossing over of who we are as people, the enmeshment between those two worlds, and just being able to point at it and say, you know what, I'm finding this hard today. How about you?
Yeah.
Makes it easier.
Cool. Final question. What obstacles are you facing during this crisis where you need to draw on your courage tools?
I'm facing all kinds of obstacles. One of them is how to get all of my technology working correctly. I think there are a lot of really common challenges coming up for me and for the people that especially, I'm seeing people's real thoughts with the mindset coaching that I do. They might be presenting a good front, but then I'm getting the real version of what's happening for them. I'm finding it challenging to not be able to do what I would do every day. We all enjoy going out, doing certain things, connecting with people, connecting at people not from 2 meters away. It's bringing up a lot of gut checks for me around what do I really value and what can I let go of easily? What do I need to not resist? So I'm just returning to, my values. When I sent out that question to people, what are you willing to fight for? That's really asking, what do you value most? And my answer to that in response to them were the things I'm willing to fight for are my loved ones, my happiness and peace within myself, and the third one is my health. So I came into this with a very clear set of values. So when things are coming up for me, I'm just checking them against my values and going, how important is it? How important are those things really when it comes down to it? And that's one thing that I feel grateful to, having had a life-threatening illness before, were when the brakes screeched, I got a gut check around how much money matters and all of these things that you can't take with you. you know. So I've already had a little bit of a look behind the curtain and a bit of clarity around it. And I'm just encouraging people to do the same. So we all have, you know, business worries and, you know, all of these things that are very across the board at the moment. But if you come back to the things that really would matter to you, if this was your last year here, if this was your last month here, what do you want to spend that time doing? And I'm finding that really helps with, you know, just settling those fears when they come up and the difficulties and the challenges.
Yeah, these are big issues, and I think a general theme at the moment is people seem to be actually giving more attention to moral values and personal things like that rather than putting their corporate facade up. And I think that's a good thing. I mean, at least people have more time to think about it once they get over the fear.
Things just got very real for a lot of people, and I think you know, a lot of people are having a difficulty adjusting to the inability to control what is happening at the moment. You know, but the beautiful thing is if you stay true to yourself and turn inward and really have a think about what does matter to you, what are you willing to let go of and instead focus on, and just trying to put that work into keeping yourself mentally strong, mentally positive, or on a day where you're not feeling those things and you've been in the same jammies for 3 days and, you know, you want to eat the 17th hot cross bun. It's just returning back to, you know, simple, small habits, creating small things in your day that make you feel good, make you feel better. And, you know, the beautiful thing is once you have a formula, it's just repeat as necessary.
It's nice to have a martial arts champion say it's okay to wear the jammies all morning on occasion.
I just took mine off.
And I think there's something in that for everyone. So please thank Nadine Champion. A small round of applause in your home office. It's been really interesting. On Thursday, we have coronavirus media expert and general expert, Dr. Norman Swan, 10 a.m. So tune in for that. Thanks for joining us.